Hello, this is Anka Corbin with Globig. I am here in London at the London and Partners office just right above the beautiful Thames. And my guest today is Louise Conolly-Smith. She's in charge of the North American branch that brings tech companies over into London. So thank you, Louise, so much for being here. Now, tell us a little bit about what London and Partners actually does and why companies should really make this one of their first stops and connecting with you.
Sure. So London and Partners is the promotional organisation for London. We are significantly funded by the Mayor's office, but we work with partners as well. We are the tourism office, we're the convention bureau, we're what's called major events, and my part of the company works with foreign direct investment. So people who are looking to internationalise for the first time, we help them come to London and set up fast and efficient, and our services are free. The reason people use us is because we're also very connected into the city. We know where the networks are, we know how to find office space, we know how to find your boots on the ground. We can introduce you to lawyers and accountants so you can become registered and can start trading in London. And then my role is to actually work with the technology companies who've come here and are really scaling their businesses. So that could be companies like Twilio through to companies like Salesforce, or Google this week announced that they're creating another 3,000 jobs. So as a company, our role is to help companies come to London and grow, but also our remit is to help foreign overseas visitors come to London and experience London as well.
It's really a kind of a world-renowned program that you've developed here. I know that other countries and other cities are absolutely emulating this program. What makes it so unique? I realize that you're, helping, but there has to be something special. Is it just the personalities and the friendliness and this kind of comprehensiveness? Share a little bit about what that magic is.
I think one of the things about London is, we are a global city, but everything is in London. So if you're in the US, you have to be in Silicon Valley. If you're in tech, you don't have to be, but you're in Silicon Valley traditionally. If you're lobbying, you have to be in DC. If you're in finance, you're probably in New York. And if you're in entertainment, you're in London. You're in LA. In London, all of that, finance, government, technology, entertainment, they're all in London. So what happens is it sort of all mashes together. Lots of the companies I work with, they say, what they really notice is I see all my clients. They're all here. I can see them. One of the big American companies I work with, a tech company, he said, where we come from in Seattle, he said, we're a big deal. He said, in London, every single one of our clients is here. It's amazing.
I think that's actually a really interesting thing. So it makes it much easier to connect and do business, if you will.
Exactly.
What about some tips for doing business here in the UK and maybe London specifically? How do US companies, or really companies from anywhere, how do they kind of get in and do a great job?
Yeah, well, I think there's a really good networking opportunities around London. So there's lots of groups. There's accelerators and incubators for specific sectors, but there's also generic networking. And generic sounds really unfair because it sounds like there's lots of networking. And I think what there is in England, which is probably not so common in America, because London is a very compact city, we have amazing public transport, people go for a drink after work. And it's very normal to socialize work with a drink. And I do know, I work with so many Americans, I do know that they're always a bit taken aback that people will say, do you want to go for a drink? And that's actually, do you want to talk to me more about what you do? And a lot of the networking that happens is over a drink. And I think that culturally is really different. And I think for Americans that's often a shock. But it's because you can leave work and you go for a drink and then you can take public transport home. No one's driving. Everyone's using public transport.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. What we've learned is called maybe pub culture here, and this is truly how you get to know someone, and it's probably the first step to actually doing business. Would you agree?
I do. So in America, I lived in America, and in America I was always really taken aback. People would say, oh, let's do coffee. And it doesn't actually mean they'll do it. In England, if someone says, do you want to go for a drink? It means, do you want to go for a drink? Let's arrange a date. It really, when people say that, they're sort of opening and being welcoming. And the pub culture is a big part of that. And I mean, one of the big networking events in London is called Silicon Drinkabout. It happens every Friday in and around an area called Tech City, which is in sort of East London, and it just moves from pub to pub, and anyone can join. It's a free event, and it's about meeting people who are like-minded over a drink.
That's fantastic. It makes it much easier, even as an expat, to connect and to kind of develop this group of friends, if you will.
Yeah.
What are some tips for companies? Are there pockets of areas that, like Shoreditch is for startups, or are there things like that are really developing to pay attention to?
Yeah, I think Shoreditch, you'll definitely see, Google put in a campus in Shoreditch in 2012, and that's had a huge impact on Shoreditch as an area. Yeah. So you'll see lots of startups, or particularly companies developing apps in Shoreditch, but lots of bigger floor plates have also developed. So you have American companies like OpenTable are in Shoreditch, in the Tech City area, Silicon Valley Bank are based there, and then what you'll see more in the Soho area, which is not that far, but it's much more advertising, and then more ad tech companies will be there. So you'll have LinkedIn are there, or Facebook are there. So you'll see those sorts of companies have sort of taken really big spaces and really big floor plates.
How challenging is it to find space and afford space? Or is that something is it moving a little bit more in the outskirts? Are you finding that it's still great in certain pockets? Or
I think one of the things you'll find is Americans don't necessarily know that London & Partners, we cover all 33 London boroughs. It's a huge area in London. So we look after companies who are out in Middlesex, we look after companies in Croydon. We obviously look after central London, but the outer boroughs are where there is probably more space. But companies like WeWork have taken, in the last 3 years, something like 1 million square foot. Right. So there is a huge appetite for co-working spaces, and lots of people have gone into niche verticals in that co-working space. So London & Partners have, for example, this week announced that we have a sports tech accelerator space. So for companies who are sports technology, because of what we do, that's an area of our expertise. And we've also 2 years ago opened travel tech space as well. So you'll find that there are very niche spaces, but we also have lots of spaces like WeWork and there are lots of companies like that providing those sorts of spaces.
So it's really not that complicated to get started. Obviously, one of the things we've learned is that it's really quick and easy from an entity creation set up. The government is really helpful in that way. That really the biggest challenge seems to be the bank account, and even that's getting better from what I hear.
Yeah, I think it depends I think the bank bit is what is, you can set up in 24 hours, but lots of our companies will then use things like Airbnb and their own credit card. So then and we will tell them, you need to sort out your bank account. And it's only when they realize that they need to sort out their bank account and they go, I should have sorted out my bank account. Because we'll tell them as a matter of course, you need to do this now. First. But because Airbnb is really popular in London, there's lots of people who provide it, and you can just do that on your credit card. You don't need to have a bank account. So it's only once you then start going, actually, I now need a bank account. And normally, I have to be honest, people go, I now need a bank account tomorrow.
Right, or yesterday.
Yeah, exactly, or yesterday. And then they go, oh, I thought that would be just as easy as setting up my business, and it really isn't.
Well, and I think because it's actually opposite in the U.S., which many of the companies are coming from, that the entity creation takes a little bit more time and thought, but the bank account is typically really quick.
Yeah. I think because of money laundering and those sorts of things, there's just an awful lot of due diligence that the banks do, and I think possibly they need to become slicker.
Any tips, advice for someone, they're in a fast-growing company, they're really thinking about it, what would you tell them, reassure them if they're they're not really sure they're ready to go?
Yeah. Well, I would say that obviously London is open and that they should come. And that really they should speak to London & Partners, because our role is to help companies come faster. When we work with companies, we always ask them for feedback. And when we were talking about this, and one of my colleagues said the feedback he had when he looked at it, he realized that over 50% of the companies he worked with said, you have saved me over 6 months in setting up. So our role is to accelerate the growth.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the reasons. We have a similar goal, and we believe that London & Partners is one of the best resources, if not the best resource, for getting set up in London. And we absolutely enjoy sending, companies your way, because we hear nothing but amazing things. So thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your advice. And as you heard, London is open. It is an amazing city. So thank you. This is Anke Corbin with Globig. It's time to go global and go big.